how were you made aware that your client had passed away that night?
I received a call from our clinical manager about 11 p.m. She informed me that the patient had passed. She was still gathering some of the details from the nurse that he was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead. The family was at the hospital. One of our other nurses who worked on the case was a close family friend, was also at the hospital. The clinical manager informed me that our nurse who was working on the shift had went to the hospital and wanted to come in, but was advised not to because the parents were very upset with the situation. She was going to gather some more information, and then we were going to regroup the next day on Monday since it was so late, or Friday since it was so late on Thursday.
Okay. So what did you do?
I told her, let's speak to Jackie, let's get her in right away. We definitely want to get the details together before we make the call to the family. So Friday we came in and she had spoke to Jackie, the nurse, and she was still very upset. She said she was going to try to make it in. She really didn't see how she was going to make it in that day.
Yeah.
It was a very traumatic experience for her. And let me start to say it was her first shift with that patient. She was very well trained. She worked on the pediatric side for a while, but this was her first shift with a client on the adult side. So Marilyn that day made a call to the family. And she came back and reported that she spoke to the family and pretty much just explained to them that she didn't really know what had happened. We were waiting for Jackie to come in and told her that she had to get in as soon as possible. So it wasn't until Monday that Jackie had come into the office.
Got you. So back up, what was your office's reaction to this incident of losing a long-term client?
Friday was a very somber day in the office. Both the CSM and our clinical manager who had dealt with him for such a long time,
Right.
were really upset over the situation. It definitely affected them personally. We know that it affected Jackie very personally. What we tried to do is just make sure that we could get the information that we could before speaking to the family, which in hindsight that was probably one of the lessons that we learned is we definitely probably should have reached out sooner. Both on my part and on our clinical manager's part, there was a couple factors involved with this throughout that weekend too that was an issue. So Marilyn had spoke to the family that day and said they were very, very upset. This family was very involved in their son's care. They both parents didn't work. They pretty much he was their life.
Wow.
This happened to be one of the unfortunate times. This family, again, throughout the years, never left the patient alone with a new nurse. They would have the nurse work usually several shifts before they would think about going out. Jackie orienting the week before and precepting at the house made an impression on them, and they trusted her very much. She knew what she was doing very well, so they actually had decided that night to step out to go to a family party when the incident happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So what contact did you and your office have with the client's family?
Real quick. Can you actually get that out of the room? It doesn't matter, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's all I can hear. We don't have to start over. It's irrelevant, but why continue with it? I always forget to remove clocks from rooms.
Oh, the ticking.
Honestly, you can't hear. I wasn't even gonna move it.
That's fine.
Okay, you're good to start whenever.
Okay.
Wait when she says that.
So what contact did you and your office have with the client's family?
It was the Friday after we had made contact. The clinical manager had called the family to kind of go over what had happened, and they pretty much just wanted answers, which we did not have at the time. Over the weekend, the nurse who was a close friend of the family, she also worked for us. She went to the house and was helping, kind of clean up his room and gather the things for them since it was too hard for them to go in his room without them. One of the lessons we learned is that we still probably should have reached out sooner the following week on Monday and Tuesday than we did.
Right.
Our communication, like it was throughout the majority of this case, was through the day shift nurse who worked there. She was the one who was close with them. She actually reported to us over the weekend that, at the time we said, should we reach out to them? Should they want us called? What's kind of the temperature at the house? And she said, at this time, the mom said she didn't want to talk to us at the office.
Right.
We maybe took her words too much at face level instead of reading into it some more. She did let us know that the funeral was going to be held on Tuesday. Not the funeral, I'm sorry. What's the word I'm looking for?
Viewing?
the viewing was going to be held on Tuesday, and we wanted to make sure that we were there for that. So the CSM and our clinical manager, who had been with the family for almost 2 years, went out to the viewing and made contact with the family there as well. And again, it was probably a misread of the situation, but they felt that they were in the grieving process. One of the things that I think we learned from this too is how you have to watch what you do from a generosity standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that this family really did not have many resources.
Right.
So as an office, we wanted to help with the funeral costs. So we actually, gave a donation to the family to help with the funeral costs, which I think also was taken the wrong way.
Right.
I think that was taken more of we're trying to pay you off type of payment rather than we want to help you out, because we knew that this child was also the source of their family's income. Like I said, both parents didn't work. He was their life. So one of the things that I think we learned from this that we definitely could have done better is maybe the way we presented it, or not presented it as soon as we had presented it to them.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about field employees. So what contact did you and your office have with the employee, Jackie?
The night of, she actually had contacted the day shift nurse first after the incident was occurring. The patient wasn't pronounced dead until he arrived at the hospital, so the paramedics had taken him out. So she immediately called her, which, they said she left her a cell phone number, said, if you have any problems, let me know. She called her first, and it was actually the day shift nurse who then called Marilyn. Marilyn then called Jackie and was communicating with her. Jackie went right to the hospital. Like she said, she wanted to go in. She did everything she could at the home before she called 911.
Right.
It was very upsetting to her because she was alone. The family wasn't there. She actually had made about 8 or 9 attempts to contact the family through both of their cell phone numbers, and neither of them had answered or had responded. And when they were able to finally get a hold of somebody, they just said, your son's on the way to the hospital. Friday, we also contacted her again and wanted her to come in to kind of go over everything, the whole situation, what had occurred. Marilyn said on Friday to me that she spoke to the nurse and she was 100% confident Jackie did everything right that she should have. She went through everything, but we wanted to get her statement. She was just too upset to come in the office on Friday, so she wasn't able to make it in until Monday to review everything.
Okay. Thank you. And when did you become aware that the family was questioning the nurse's practices?
To be honest, it wasn't until we received notification that they had wrote a letter to Mark about not receiving answers. I think this is another thing that we could have learned from and probably over-communicated in the beginning to make sure that we were answering their questions, even if it wasn't the answers they were looking for or the answers that we had. At least after we spoke to Jackie, kind of reviewing the situation with them, as far as what exactly had occurred according to Jackie.
Right.
One of the other things, that I think looking back now that we should have done right away was really pry for those police reports. One of the issues that came up later was we actually had 3 different reports and 2 were differing from the one, which also was making us questioning ourselves about the situation.
Okay. And you said you learned from a letter to Mark. When was that after the incident?
I believe it was about a week or so after that he had wrote it, so they probably got notice Thursday or Friday after the incident, so yeah, about a week.
Okay. Thank you. And so the obvious question is, how did you feel about all of this?
I actually wasn't too surprised. I think maybe I was surprised now, but in hindsight, knowing the demographics and knowing the family and what I've learned, it wasn't surprising at all. I only had a couple weeks of experience. I really just took the office over full-time the week that this incident occurred. I was in and out a couple days here and there in a transition period. So I knew of the family, and it wasn't until this incident where, the office started sharing some more details about the situation. One of the conversations that we had with them the following week, made it realize that not only were they concerned about their whole life being their son, but also he was the main source of income for them. Right. They were able to survive because of the checks that he was receiving. So in that hindsight, it wasn't surprising, that they were going to try to go the route on top of, they didn't have all the information. When they finally actually got the first two, the police and the EMT report, it actually contradicted what our nurse had reported to us in her statements.
Gotcha. And sounds very closely related, but what did you do after hearing this?
After hearing that, I worked with legal services right away, and I think at that time when that letter came out, Mark really wanted to kind of bring in a third-party observer with Marie here. And I think now, if there's an incident questioning, I would want to do that right away.
Right.
I think from our office's standpoint, communicating what you have is great. Sometimes, though, the third party, the kind of the middleman, is actually a better view for the family's opinion, because they know that this isn't coming from the office. This isn't coming from the people who sent them out. I don't think there's a better situation to investigate a large incident without that third party. So we worked with Marie right away and had interviewed. She went out and interviewed the family, interviewed Jackie. We were able to get a hold of the police reports, and at that point, we were still kind of in the middle. From what Jackie had said, everything was by the book. She did everything that she could have possibly physically done to help save his life. There were some details that differed, though, in the police and EM report from what Jackie had made us, and that's all we had to go off of that report. We still knew there was a paramedic report, and unfortunately it took us a little bit longer. I think it was another week or more until we were actually able to get a hold of the paramedic report, which backed up Jackie's story about some of the details of the incident.
Thank you. So one final question, recognizing how difficult these incidents are to manage, from your personal experience, what are some lessons that you want to share with other leaders within the company?
I think lesson number one is just over communicate. Even if you don't have the answers the families are looking for, just being a sounding board for them, finding out what their concerns are so that you can investigate those concerns. There are times where you might think you know what the family's concerns are and what information they want to know, and unless you're actually physically speaking out with them, it might not be what you were thinking. So you may spend time investigating a piece of it that's something that's not a concern to them. The second thing is with over communication with the family, but communication within the office. I think one of the big things that happened here was that Friday conversation with the family. When I spoke to my clinical manager after, she said that she had spoken to the mom, and that, obviously she was very upset and irate, and they went over the situation, and, she explained to them what she had thought had occurred. But it wasn't until I found out later that conversation didn't go exactly, as we had planned or as I had thought what had happened. I had thought that the conversation went, and they were able to talk about things and work out the concerns, when really it turned out that the conversation that we had on Friday, the day after the incident, was, pretty much we just didn't know what had happened, and that was the end of the conversation. Was I'm not sure what happened. If I would have communicated a little bit better, I think I would have known how that conversation had went, and then could have made a follow-up afterwards. At the viewing, we did give our condolences, and they were there, and there was no issues brought up.
Right.
But I think another concern that I have is the day nurse that was there, who was saying the family doesn't want to communicate.
Right.
Not that she is untrustworthy, or, if the family was really upset, they might not have communicated to her the same way they would have communicated to us, that they still wanted to talk about things. Third, like I said, if you are going to offer some type of financial assistance or anything in this situation like us, we wanted to help, because we knew that they didn't have the assets, and the funerals can be expensive. Probably waiting a little bit instead of doing it at the time of, I think that just made it seem more like they felt we were just paying them because of the incident had occurred. The other thing is, from a supporting standpoint, get documentation as quickly and as fast as possible. A lot of times, sometimes it's hard because they don't release it to us; they release it to the family. But if we would have communicated to them and said, "Let's get this documentation from every piece of it," we would have seen that, and it would have made us also not question ourselves as to what our nurse was telling us. It was a little bit back and forth through the process with Jackie, because she came in and told us her side of it, and we're like, okay, it seems like you did everything possible. And then we got the reports, and the details were differing from what Jackie had reported as far as suctioning and that there was blood that she had seen. Jackie had reported to us that there was no blood
Right.
at the time. The police and EMTs reported when they got there was blood in the canister from when she was suctioning, so obviously there was a hiccup in her story. And so we had to revisit it. We brought her back in again. It had such a negative effect on Jackie because she felt like we didn't trust her. And I think that definitely affected her very personally, that, she was out there and we're supposed to be her support system. We're doing our job by investigating it, and I think at times we support her, and then when we got the documentation that different, it wasn't that we weren't supporting her, we're just, let's see what really happened because this is differing for some reason. And in that time period before we got the paramedic report, which backed up Jackie's story, she felt kind of like she was getting thrown under the bus. If I think we would have pushed hard from the beginning and got every piece of the information before making a judgment, the situation could have been handled completely differently. But I think the overall lesson is just over-communicating. I know a lot of us, difficult conversations are hard. I personally don't have a problem having them, but I think I should have stepped up more and probably made more of the communication. My clinical manager is probably one of the most amazing clinical managers that I could have as far as caring about her patients. She was actually ready that night, midnight, to go out to the hospital, visit with the family. But I think I should have stepped up more and pushed that initial communication. Even if I was just calling to say, hey, I'm sorry, we really don't know what happens. I'm going to need your support and help and at least getting these reports, because the families can get them a lot easier than we can, so that we can really get to the bottom of this for you.
Well, thank you for taking your time to share this very serious incident and the lessons learned. So thanks again, Brandon. We appreciate it.
No, it's helped our office significantly, like I said, with incidents that have come up since then, the way that we handle them and look at them. And, hopefully this can help somebody else if they're going through the same thing. And I'm willing, if anyone wants to contact me, we can definitely give some more information.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Brandon, you did a good job explaining sort of the lessons learned, but I'm just curious, you talked a little about the support for Jackie. Any other thing that you would want to do differently in terms of how you would support her?
Yes. One of the things in the beginning after this happened, she was obviously extremely upset. And one of the things that we did offer her in the beginning was the counseling that's available to the employees.
Okay.
And she turned it down. She said, no, I'm not interested at this time. And in hindsight, it was 2 or 3 weeks later, she actually ended up accepting it. And I think that helped her tremendously. I really think that we could have pushed that in the beginning and offered it to her. And we actually even went above and beyond in the end and actually paid for some additional counseling that was person to person instead of just over the phone. Sometimes they make the recommendations after they have that initial contact of what would be needed. And I think that helped her tremendously, and we were able to support her in that way. But in the beginning, I think we definitely could have pushed that, and that you should push that with them. It's a phone call, whether they get something out of it or not.
Right.
At least that they've tried, you've tried. And sometimes it's good just to talk to somebody that's not your employer.
Right.
Even if it's a friend, we can at least go that route first and offer those support to them. Again, from the support thing, I think, like I stated, just pretty much getting all your reports together before kind of jumping to a conclusion.
Right.
I think that would be a huge help in the support process as well. That's something we could have done a little better.
Okay, and thanks for really taking your time and sharing this incident with us. I really think it's going to help out a lot of leaders, so thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you very much.
So, you talked a little bit about a lot about what the lessons were, learned. Can you talk a little bit more about, the importance of supporting, the field staff when incidents like this occur?
Yeah, I think our field staff are definitely our lifeline out there. And, in this situation, Jackie, was really throwing a wrench into, the day-to-day. Something you prepare for as a nurse, but you don't actually are ever really prepared for when it happens.
Right.
One of the things I think we could have done a lot better is support her afterwards, in the sense of offering her, the counseling and the coaching that's available. We did offer it to her initially, and she declined. I think it wasn't until a couple weeks later when it was reoffered and kind of not pushed on her, but basically, just at least have the conversation with them and see where it goes from there. And in hindsight, it really did make a difference after she was able to talk it out. So that's just another thing to remember is if they don't accept it initially, at least revisit it. I think we waited a little bit too long to revisit it for her. And, she did go through and she had the counseling over the phone, and they actually recommended some in-person meetings, which the office had supported her in and set her up with somebody locally for her to go meet with. And I think that made a huge difference for her. So whatever you can do just to be there for them, it's an event that you hope never happens, but when it does, you want to make sure you handle it the right way.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate you, taking your time to be with us and share very important lessons learned. So thanks again.
No, and I hope, that people learn lessons from this. I know we definitely have, and I'm available, if anyone wants to reach out or, we can talk some more in depth about it.
Thank you.
All right.